By January 2026, if you are earning above 800,000 naira, 25% will be taxed off your earnings. By January 2026, if you are earning above 50 million naira, 50% could be charged off your earnings. These are so many more myths and controversies that have been flying around. An average man doesn't even actually know what he is supposed to be taxed by January 2026. Just as it is said, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it inside a book. I kid you not, so many Nigerians doesn't have the luxury of time to go and read and make their findings to understand the depth of which they will be taxed from their earnings. Drew TV have made it very simple for you. Welcome to our Drew TV podcast, and today we're having an interesting guest here who will be unpacking all the myths and controversies surrounding the 2026 tax reforms as amended by the Tinubu administration. I have with me here an auditor and a tax expert that will be unpacking all of this. Let's meet you, please.
Hello, good afternoon, viewers. Good afternoon, Drew TV. My name is AJ Idoko Kenneth, auditor and tax consultant. I'm the managing partner for Baka James & Co., and I've been in audit and tax practice with the firm for over a decade. Thank you very much for having me.
You are most welcome. We are pleased to have you. As a matter of fact, the myths and controversies flying around the media space, we are so happy. We will be discussing this with you during this tea break, and you will be helping us unpacking all of this because, as a matter of fact, you are an authority in the tax space. So, Mr. Kenneth, my first question to you is, I want you to, first of all, tell us how do you feel about the tax reform, the 2026 tax reform? How do you feel about it?
Well, for me, it's actually mixed feelings because, this is where I also earn from, right? So anybody should be happy when business is booming. Yeah, because for me, I see this as my business peak season because the more people pay taxes, the more they need tax advisory services. But that being said, as an individual and as a company, I don't think we are selfish, and I'm selfish. So I look out for what benefits the vast majority as against what will benefit me as an individual. Absolutely. From day one, I'm sorry to say, I've kicked against this regime coming to power because I knew what they stand for. The person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, if you are conversant with Lagos, Lagos is one place where you go, you see a woman selling rice, Ibuka rice under an umbrella, but she's paying taxes. Nobody is talking about how she manages to get the money she gets to do her business. Nobody cares about that. All they are focused on the moment she starts doing business, they start taxing her. So we saw this bigger picture, and that's why for some of us, we're actually against the emergence of Anna Suwaji, not because he's a bad person, but because of what he stands for. He's a taxman, we all know that. And going by the trajectory in Lagos is what we are seeing being replicated on the national stage. So I don't think it should be a thing of surprise. So yes, it's a mixed feelings in the sense that I'm going to be a taxpayer and I'm also going to be a consultant. So I'll be paying tax to the government and I probably might make money from consultancy. But which one affects me more? Which one affects my friends more? Which one affects my family more is the tax payment. So I think that should be the focal point. So for me, in summary, I don't think I'm happy with the development.
Okay, before we move to the crux of this conversation, drawing from what you just said, your opening remark, don't you think if we are striving for a better country with good road, good infrastructures, just like we've seen in the West, in developed countries,
yeah.
Yes, don't you think what they used in achieving the way they are today is tax? If we are not meant to pay tax, how do you think we are going to excel and be a developed nation?
Let me ask you this question. Are you familiar with Dubai? You know how Dubai is, right? You know how sophisticated Dubai is?
Yes, of course.
It's surprising to know that Dubai, they don't pay taxes. Once you do business in Dubai, you don't pay taxes. It's tax-free. And that is a way of encouraging investors. And that's why a lot of businesses are moving to Dubai today. So as much as people see tax as a way of making money to run government, not paying taxes or giving a tax holiday or giving a tax-free zone or not taxing at all also attracts investors. And in Nigeria today, yes, we need money to run the economy, but it must not be taxpayers' money.
But in contrast to Dubai, as you've used as an example, let's look at countries like USA and United Kingdom.
Yeah.
They are what they are today because they rely heavily on taxpayers' money. They use taxpayers' money to improve and develop their country. And today they are one of the most powerful countries
In
in
the
the
world,
world.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll start with US. For US, for instance, US, yeah, there's an effective tax system in the US.
Absolutely.
But one thing is this: they don't just depend on taxes. If you look at the GDP of the US, they don't focus more on taxes. They focus on production, and that's what China did as well. They didn't focus on taxes to transform their economy.
But remember, they use those taxpayers' money to get infrastructure for industrial
Listen,
development.
you can't put the cart before the horse. And the reason why I'm saying this is Nigerians have been paying taxes since independence. In fact, the only sector that both the PDP and the APC government have done well since the inception of democracy in 1999 has been in revenue generation. When it comes to revenue generation, give it to the Nigerian government, PDP, APC, they've done perfectly well when it comes to revenue generation. They know how to generate money. But the question is, this money is being generated. Do we have stuff on ground to show that this is what these monies are used for? And that's why I say you can't put the cart before the horse. I'm not saying the government shouldn't tax citizens, but if you must tax, give them something. For instance, the moment as well this government came into power, what I expected was this. If subsidy was removed, I expected something to be given back. You can decide to say, okay, this fund for subsidy, we are going to use it to fix the power sector, because for any economy to thrive today, your primary source of energy must be very affordable. And in Nigeria today, we're talking of fuel as our primary source of energy. How much is a liter of fuel today? Do you know in Libya, at some point, a bottled water was more expensive than fuel?
So we
And
had.
this goes, yeah, it's there. The reality was there until the Libya we have today. Libya under Gaddafi, bottled water was more expensive than fuel. And that is their primary source of energy. And what does that translate to? It translates to every facet of life: transportation, healthcare. Because the moment your cost of energy is low, it affects every aspect of the economy, because goods and services need to be transported. And once the cost of transportation is high, it affects the price of goods and services. That is why you are seeing this hike of prices in the market today. So for me, I would have expected the government to give the citizens something, because we have been paying taxes. But there's still been bad road, there's still been insecurity, there's still been unemployment. So at this point, it is not about taking from the masses, it's about giving. So when you give them something, you are able to convince them that, look, these monies you are going to pay as taxes, we have given you this, we can give you more. That is a source of encouragement.
Yeah, buttressing on what you mentioned earlier, you're giving it to the government, both APC and PDP, their tenacity and
When it comes to revenue generation.
Exactly, when it comes to revenue generation.
But when it comes to application,
At this moment, right?
Yeah.
I just want to do a little bit of clarification with data and information that is out there for
Okay.
public scrutiny.
Yeah.
When you compare, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu removed subsidy immediately he stepped into the office, and
Yeah.
at that moment, at that second, the price of fuel per liter skyrocketed, and consequently, the money that was meant for subsidy was then plowed back into the treasury. And if you see from that moment get go, the allocations to state government have significantly increased.
Yeah.
And this money have been sent to state government to develop, get their state developed, get their state developed.
Yeah.
So I needed to make that clear. The government, the state governors are getting more revenue, more allocations.
Yeah.
And so it is of the federal government, right, to do everything all at the same time. But they've delegated the subnational government, which are the governors, to do this. But we really don't know what is going on. But not drifting so much away from the crux of the conversation, we will be coming back to this, where we'll be talking about the impact, the perceived impact of this tax reform.
Yeah.
But first, let me ask, the myths and the controversies surrounding the percentages that will be charged per income earners, or how much you make, and all of those things. When you go to Twitter, Facebook today, what you see somebody explaining something different from the one you're going to see tomorrow. So there are a whole lot. So you, as an expert, can you just help us just unpack this? Let's get to know people that are safe and people that will be paying this tax. And let's also know if these tax reforms are helpful to the poor masses or not. Let's just get to know. Then we can now dive fully into the conversation around the importance, the significance, and the benefits of this tax reform to a common Nigerian.
Yeah. Firstly, yes, the misinformation has been out there, but who caused it? You know, when you don't inform people, they are bound to come up with different theories and
Absolutely,
explanations, you know.
absolutely.
So you don't leave things just the way they are. You have to do it the way you want them to be. The chairman presidential panel on tax reforms, Taiwo Yedele, yeah, he's been doing a lot, going to media houses and all, but the reality is this, he's not doing enough. Nigerians are not being sensitized enough. I'm very sure we're only having this conversation because probably we are in the city, we're in the Federal Capital Territory, and then probably for people in Lagos, Port Harcourt. But there are people in the rural areas who do not even know anything about the tax reforms. So it now calls to question some of the government agencies we have. What is the NOA doing, the National Orientation Agency? What have they done since these tax reforms? We are barely 2 to 3 weeks to implementation, and then a lot of people are not even aware of the reality of these tax reforms. So that is still on the government to clarify, because the moment you don't put out the right information, you will now leave it at the whims and caprices of people to just assume, and then that might lead to misinformation. That being said, the summary of the tax reform is this. As an individual, we are clear the tax band has been adjusted. You, as an individual, you're going to pay between 15 to 25% of your income as taxes, depending on your income bracket. For instance, for somebody who earns between 801,000 to say 3 million,
800,000.
801,000,
Okay,
because the law,
801,000.
you know, the position of the law is if you don't earn in excess of 800,000 naira
Okay,
as an
okay, okay.
individual, yeah,
So
you won't pay a
that could
dime.
be 800,000
And 1
naira.
naira, yeah,
Yes.
right? If you
Yes.
earn 800,000 naira, you are going to pay tax at 15%. That is the position of the law, because what the law says is if your income is not in excess of 800,000, you are not to pay a dime. You are paying zero taxes.
Okay.
And then the 800,000 is not your take-home pay. It's not your gross pay. The
Okay.
take-home pay is your net pay. And when you talk of net pay, is this, the government did something. Okay, fine. Since we are going to be taxing Nigerians, we want to give back something. And what is that thing they give back? They give back a rent relief. And that rent relief could be 20% of your gross earnings. That's your earnings for 12 months, 20% of it, but not more than 500,000 naira, meaning you can claim a rent relief of 500,000 to reduce your tax burden. So let's assume you earn 10 million naira in revenue.
That's
500
gross or net?
gross.
Okay.
Gross, 10 million. That's in a year. For 12 months, you earn 10 million. What the law is saying is you can claim up to 500,000 naira as relief, meaning you are not going to tax the entire 10 million naira. You are going to tax 9.5 million. Now, aside that rent relief, there are also other deductibles. You have your National Housing Fund. You have your loan. If you take loan as an individual, you have a right to deduct your interest. Okay, so let's assume your interest, your national housing fund, your insurance, everything grosses up to another 500,000. The law allows you to take a 500,000 rent relief, and then you claim that 500,000 for all those other stuff I mentioned, which brings your income to 9 million naira. So what you just need to do as an individual is look at the income tax bracket. Where does 9 million fall? It's going to fall between 15% and 25%.
Okay.
So meaning they are going to tax your 9 million naira at up to less than up to 15%, and up to 25% as well. So depending on where, if I don't have all the tax bracket, I won't start spilling everything up front, you know. So that's that. And then for companies, the law says for companies who earn below 50 million naira, so you need to earn up to 51 million naira in a year for you to pay taxes. So I think that's the best incentive they've given, and they feel it's enough. But if you were to ask me, I'll tell you, I think that's paltry compared to what would have been done. I would have expected the government to extend the income bracket exempted to be up to 10, 15 million naira, because if you are looking at a population that is mostly youth, we're expecting them to grow. And how do they grow when they don't have money at their disposal? Note, don't take out of the context that we have a very abysmal minimum wage. So you are paying people a very terrible minimum wage. The minimum wage is terrible, and then you are still taxing. Okay, now you say, okay, the minimum wage, you are not going to tax it. But once you earn slightly above the minimum wage, it's going to be taxed. So how do you expect the youth to develop? How do you expect them to grow? So for me, they've not given enough incentive, and then taxing Nigerians, especially individuals, low-income earners, shouldn't come up in the first place.
That's crazy, and it's getting more interesting because, as a matter of fact, prior to this conversation with you, I am bereft of enough information surrounding this.
Yeah.
And even though we're just beginning, it's sounding interesting to me already, and I can't help but to acknowledge the fact that I'm picking stuffs already from the conversation. So my question is, for clarity's sake, when you mentioned that from 800,000 naira above, net income will be taxed. Now let's assume somebody earns 100,000 naira in a month. Then in a year that makes it 1.2 million naira.
Yeah,
and that 100,000 naira is net after the deductions and what have you. He has 100,000 naira left.
Yeah.
So 1.2 million. So the government will now charge 15% minimum of 1.2 million of the person's earning.
Of course, a
which
salary.
That is over 150,000 naira.
Of course.
And pay back to the government.
Of course.
Which is even way above the person's monthly income.
So now you get where we're going to. So, but imagine that's in the case of somebody earning 1.2 million. So imagine if somebody was earning 12 million. At least, even if you take the tax off, the person still has something reasonable to make do it. Now, how do you tax somebody whose earnings is just 1.2 million naira annually?
That's crazy.
So, but Mr. Taiwo, the chairman crazy. Presidential panel on tax reform will tell you, yeah, they are not taxing poor individuals. The question is, who are the poor individuals?
Exactly.
Because
in Nigeria today, if you are earning less than 300,000 naira, you are poor.
Do you understand? And you are telling me you are letting people who earn just 800,000 off the hook. No, you've not done enough.
Okay, so to make this even more interesting to understand, if an individual earns less than 800,000 naira, they are exempted from tax. But if a company earns less than 50 million naira,
they are also exempted.
They are also exempted.
Yeah.
So companies are now being empowered.
Yeah.
While individuals are now being maybe opposite of empower. Can we say depowered?
Good. Let me explain.
So companies, individuals because not everybody works for government. A lot of people work for company and private organizations.
Yeah.
So they will put in all their effort, keep working, and they deduct their tax. Then the company that employs them will enjoy a tax holiday.
Yeah. The thing is this. The law, the essence of the tax reform, the aim is to let the poor off the tax hook and then focus more on the rich. That is the whole idea behind the reform. But what we are seeing in play is not what they are saying. Of course,
that is what I was about asking. If it is to leave the poor off the hook, now, why are you taxing the poor?
Now, let me tell you where I'm going to. Under late President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, the position, by virtue of the 2019 Finance Act, the position was companies earning 25 million and below were exempted from paying taxes. Now, Asiwaju has increased it from 25 million to 50 million. So it means more companies. Before, if you earn 26 million, you are taxable. But this regime is saying, no, that is poor. Let's increase the threshold to 50 million. So you have let more companies off the hook. And the essence is for MSMEs to grow. Those smaller companies, the reason why you are letting them off the hook is for them to have more money to grow. Because that money you are paying as taxes can be used to employ 3 to 5 more staff, which will boost productivity, right? And at the end of the day, translate to making more profit. And by the time you make more profit, you exceed the 50 million threshold, okay? And then you start paying taxes. So that is a good one. For companies, I want to laud the government. They did well. Yeah, I would want to allow them for increasing the threshold from 25 to 50 million. But for individuals, it's where the problem is. 800,000, like I said, is not enough. You are claiming you want to tax the rich. If you really want to tax the rich, I should expect the government to exempt people earning, say, 30 million and below from paying taxes. If truly.
Of course.
And that is why, going by the allegation in the National Assembly, I want to assume that is true. I wouldn't want to speak on that issue pending when it's resolved. They said what was signed by the National Assembly was different from what was gazetted, because it's possible what was signed by the National Assembly was for low-income earners to be let off the hook. And who are the low-income earners? As far as I'm concerned in Nigeria today, going by the inflationary figures, if you earn 10 million naira annually, you are still poor.
Of course.
Because by the time you pay your rent, you do your daily bills, you pay your children's school fees, you buy fuel to work, you do a lot of stuff. That 10 million is nothing. So in Nigeria, if you earn 10 million annually, you are still poor.
Of course.
So I see no reason why they should say they're only exempting people earning 800,000.
You're earning 10 million naira, an average person earning 10 million naira. Mind you, his house rent could even go up as far as 30% of that income.
Because rent have increased because of the inflation. That's why I say going by the inflationary index on ground, 10 million naira, if you earn 10 million naira annually in Nigeria, you are still poor. Unless you are extra prudent, that's when you might be able to carve out something reasonable from a 10 million. Because if you divide 10 million by 12 months, you'll be shocked.
Of course.
Do your monthly wage bill. And today we are not just sustaining ourselves. We have a system where even our parents that serve the government do not get the entitlement, so the responsibility falls on you. So even when you earn 10 to 15, 20 million, at the end of the day, you have nothing to write home about. So for me, I think I want to disagree with the government that they've not really done well when it comes to the personal income tax. They've done well for the companies, but for the individuals, more needs to be done.
Okay, Mr. Kenneth, we can't thank you enough. It's been a very fruitful conversation so far. So before we go, let me ask you this. What do you think is the way forward? How do we go from here? Do you think there's a window of opportunity for the government to, recalibrate and rethink this reform? What do you think is the way forward? How do you think an average Nigerian out there earning less than 10 million naira could, survive this wave of, taxing and trying to survive and all this, a whole lot?
Yeah.
So what do you think is the way forward? Where do we go from here?
Listen, first things first. I told you I'm a tax consultant. It's my season, right? So I want to advise from an angle of a fair human. I would advise, and I would have expected the government not to even tax Nigerians now. I'm not saying don't tax them at all. Don't tax them now. You know why? The problem with Nigeria is not about generating revenue. The problem we've had over the